Welcome to Streamlining Multi-Channel Content Delivery, a visible webinar in association with Rakuten Aquafadas. My name's Maureen Cuddiford-Jones, and I'm your moderator this afternoon. Today, we're joined by Rakuten Aquafadas Director of Pre-Sales, Stéphane Dayras, and PwC's Marketing Director for France, Jean-Paul Bouteloup, for a look at how you can deliver high-quality content experiences across every device, and how PwC is using modern technology to do just that. Before we start, let me tell you about how you can interact with us today. You're in listen-only mode, but we're always keen to hear any questions or comments you have throughout the session. Please use the questions pane to submit these to us at any time. We're also monitoring a Twitter hashtag, which is #StreamlineContent, so feel free to interact with us on Twitter as well. Lastly, as always, we're recording the webinar, so you'll be sent a copy to watch on demand or share with colleagues within the next 24 hours. With that, we'll get started. So, hello, Stéphane and Jean-Paul.
Hello.
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 Stéphane, I think we're kicking off with a bit of context about Rakuten Group and Aquafadas. So, please, take it away.
Thank you, Morag, and thank you first of all to Jean-Paul who joined us for this webinar today. We are glad to be with you again today. And first of all, because maybe some of you don't know about Rakuten Group, who we are. Rakuten is one of the largest internet and e-commerce company in the world. As you can see from these few KPIs, we have more than 1.2 billion members accessing all our services. We have more than 70 business units at Rakuten Group, and all of them are spread over 30 regions, as you can see there. We have different business units. Maybe some of them you know better than Rakuten only, like Rakuten TV, Viber, which is part of the group. You can see also the locations at the same time. We have also marketing services with Rakuten Marketing, also Kobo for digital book, and many other brands across the world. So I won't get into too much details for this. That was just a quick introduction. Now, regarding Rakuten Aquafadas, our business unit, we are leaders in digital content publishing. We have been there for more than 12 years now in that space over the world. And we really want to empower the creation and distribution of rich and digital interactive content for any device. This is really the best way to empower your brands with personalized content over cross platforms, apps and web readers. So we always try to be at the cutting edge and bleeding edge technologies. And this is why we really want to be your preferred partner for mobile journeys. Our business unit is based in Montpellier, but also in Paris, in sunny Montpellier, as we usually say. We have about 60 employees, and a big basis of them is an R&D staff. We have the largest development base for Rakuten Group in the world, by the way, with more than 30 developers specialized in web and mobile and digital services and technologies. Again, our vision is to empower your business to get more value from your content, also to make your content unforgettable to your end users and consumers. And all of that along with innovation and excellence in what we call the haute couture rendering for the content, but also many other features you will discover across this webinar. So let's start now with the content and the focus of this webinar, which is how to streamline the content of a multi-channels. Creating the content is half the way to deliver the content, and delivering the content is many times a bigger challenge than creating the content itself. So this is why we will see all the different steps at your organizations to address issues, pain points, challenges you have, and how to get you organized for these new investigations you have to perform, but also look at your business needs, define precisely your objectives, and also look better at your consumers' expectations and fill the gap between consumer expectations and your objectives. It's all about how to fasten and streamline your content over multiple devices and channels. and we will help you to understand better that big picture, because today it's definitely a big picture. Morag, I think we can start first of all by a quick poll for our audience.
Fantastic. Yes, thank you very much, Stéphane. So as you saw there, that content delivery is many times harder than the creating the content. So we'd like to know what usually prevents you from delivering content to your audience. We've got 5 options there. Select one or more. The options are growing amount of content to deliver, the outbreak of channels that are newly adopted by the audience, content production bottlenecks or lack of resources, underperforming, a lack of business process, or unwieldy legacy systems. Now, at this point, while we're waiting for our audience to respond to this poll, I'd like to bring in Jean-Paul quickly and find out from you, Jean-Paul, what were your pain points when you were looking at streamlining your multi-channel content delivery?
From our part, our main pain point is about the ability to transform each employees and each meeting between our employees and our customer to a new experience user. We work on B2B, but each employee is a salesman and a sales girl, and we work with experts, and sometimes it's very, very difficult for an expert to be able to discuss or to show to our clients some opportunities to present the ability for PwC to answer to their business imperative. So it's very important for us to be able to create a new experience each time and transform this contact in business opportunity.
Fantastic. Well, here we go. Here we have some results, and the leading result is the content production bottleneck and lack of resources. I think this is a pretty evergreen problem, isn't it, when you're having to adopt to a new system or indeed undergo some transformation. Resources tend to be stretched to their full capacity already with the day-to-day business. Some really fascinating results there, and I believe, Stéphane, we're now going to go on to address what those pain points might be and how people might go about resolving them.
Yeah, thank you, Morag, and thank you, Jean-Paul, again. Customer feedback is always the best value in such webinars or conferences. So yeah, looking at these, and let me display all of them now on the screen. And without any, I wouldn't be an expert, but saying that for sure, the lack of resources and content production bottlenecks are really the top one. Is interesting to get from this poll. We all agree on that, because we know all that there is a growing number of channels, of outputs to reach, and that were adopted by our consumers before we were able to produce content for them. So for sure, we had to add these capabilities along the way. Unfortunately, in many companies, that was added due to the lack of resources, but also due to a lack of, let's say, a big vision and big plan for the digital transformation. Unfortunately, it was added piecemeal and step by step only. And only, I would say, the easiest and fastest solutions to be deployed, in fact, when required. But there was no real anticipation for future medias, future channels, future user consumption paradigms like the ones we are using now in our hands. So again, this is very critical to have a look at what we have today, what we have to face. We also have to cope with legacy systems that we all have in our companies. So this is definitely also another bottleneck sometimes. So these are all the business pain points we all agree we face too, and the challenges we have to go for a nice digital transformation. So definitely, I think we all agree as well in this audience that we need to change, because we need to fill in the gaps between all these consumer expectations, which are going very fast today in the field, and the delivery we have to assume to deliver all the contents and services to these new channels. So we have for that another question for you, because we want you to be very involved. So I will let Morag introduce that new question to you. now.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So here we go. What would help you improve your content delivery? Would it be, again, select one or indeed more? You can have all of them in this fantasy world of ours where you can have what you like. Content inventory and analysis. Would you like workflows improvement? Our skills and human resources? What would really bring it forward? Tools and software resources? Or perhaps improving the time to market and delivery time. Again, coming back to you, Jean-Paul, when you entered into this streamlining process, was there a difference between what you thought might improve your content delivery and then after you'd gone through the process, what actually delivered the best results? Or were you pretty on the money when it came to seeing what needed fixed?
The first point is workflow improvement. Sure, because we have an internal studio, we are able to produce some content, and when we decide to transform our capabilities to promote content, we don't want to change anything. And we want only to change some tools, some user experience again, but not to have to change our process. So using Aquafadas solution, it will be very important because we are able to implement it very quickly in our process. So we don't have to change anything, a lot of things, sorry. And the second point, of course, is to be able to increase the time to market. As you know, the content is very, very important, and to be able to push to our employees very quickly new content and to be able for us to promote to our client is very, very important. So delivery time is very, very important point.
Fantastic. Well, certainly you've picked the zeitgeist there, Jean-Paul, with workflow improvement. I think a lot of our listeners would very much like to see that improve. But it's interesting to see how close it is actually in everything apart from, interestingly, the time to market and delivery time. Content skills, human. It seems like this is a generalized problem that companies want to work on across the board. So Stéphane, I'm going to hand back to you to continue with the presentation and find out what can be done about this.
Yeah, thank you, Morag, and thank you, Jean-Paul, again. So let's have a look at all these points you have to address. I would say that, yeah, no doubt that definitely workflow and processes, definitions, but also auditing what you have in place and how to fit new services, new technologies in place with your existing and legacy processes is definitely a must-have. It's also about getting a good picture of what you have in terms of content. So auditing your content, knowing exactly what you have, all sorts of content, formats, versions, where they are located. This is a kind of audit we lead as well, and we drive at Rakuten Aquafadas for our customers because we help them to analyze what their current situation is. It's also looking at the processes, we said it before. It's also, and I could see that in the poll, definitely the need for tools, new tools and technologies and services in place. And this is where we at Rakuten Aquafadas are helping a lot our customers because we provide technologies, but not only technologies because it's a buzzword, but because they fit into the customer environment. Outside of that, I would say you really have to talk to your teams. I think Jean-Paul did it very well internally at PwC. You have to talk with the people who are going to use also the new services and technologies you're driving for these new digital outputs. You need also to identify other things like not only resources and the technologies you have in place, but also get with a budget because you will need to invest a bit of money to get new tools, new services, new organization, new workflows, but also new kinds of contents like engaging contents that we can provide with our tools, for instance, and decide also how you want to how do you want to use these outside technologies if it has to fit into your IT constraints and infrastructure. Never underestimate, I would say, your IT constraints and limitations. Right, Jean-Paul?
Yes, yes, sure. And security is is a very important point, because sometimes you want to use, and from my example, of course, it will be very easy to convince a marketing team and to use, and sales department too, to use this kind of solution. But when you want to implement it, you have some technical features to fix, some security points to check, and it's very important to onboard very quickly the IT department. But
absolutely.
Often, if you use a SaaS solution,
yeah.
It's a very important. And if you can use some integrated solutions, we can work with standard tools. It's better. It's better to explain. And for example, for PwC, we work a lot of tests before accept to use these tools. But it's a good challenge for us and for Rakuten.
As well. Thank you, Jean-Paul. Yeah, that was a good feedback as well. Never underestimate that part. And even if we at Rakuten Aquafadas are a SaaS platform, you should embrace the IT department immediately after the first meetings. That's mandatory. So yeah, we can go to the next step now, which is after you define your situation and the context, you need also to define now very precisely your objectives. And I would say mainly your business purpose, your business objectives. Don't say, I want to be on the web or mobile, get that kind of technology, but rather think about your purpose in terms of business. Do you want to increase revenue, increase your audience, your customer base, reduce the time to market, all that sorts of business purposes. You need also to define very precisely your target, your targeted audience. So who will be using these new digital content and services, these new apps and websites and web services, for instance. Also, you would need, in some cases, depending on the kind of digital transformation you're driving, for the right monetization of your new digital content and services. Some of them will be B2B, so maybe you don't want to monetize them. Others will be B2C or B2B2C. So that will bring, for sure, monetization with it in that case. Last but not the least on this short list is about the content itself. That's very important that you have a live content, an up-to-date content distributed to your new channels. You need to create very rich, relevant, personalized content, but also maintain it along the way, update it, create new content month after month if you can, because you all know that your audience will get rid of your new service if you don't bring them new content many times. When you come also to digital transformation and mobile aspects, because we know that space very well at Rakuten Aquafadas, we will help you to look for the way you want to deploy also these new channels and services and apps. If you want a native app, a web app, I won't dig into details, technology details now, but make sure that if you need any detail, I will be glad to help you at the end for the Q&A session. You need to target which computers, which devices you want to bring on in that big picture. You need also to plan your project with proper timeline. You need to have a project team, a pilot setup, all these sorts of, let's say, mandatory steps for any big project. It's also about for when you start such a new digital transformation or project, you need to find the good sponsors, not only a project team, but good sponsors for business to help you to bring not only budget, but also to get adoption. And I think Jean-Paul will give us more feedback as well as the KPIs. So I will leave Jean-Paul to give you his feedback on these aspects.
Thank you, Stéphane. Maybe first, in our strategy, when we decide to implement these new tools, and not only tools, but this change, is to define where in the customer journey we want to use this new, we want to cap this audience, and when this audience want to use bookstore. For PwC, we name the application bookstore, And it's a very important because it depends on this customer journey element to define the type of content, which kind of interface we want to use. In our case, we don't, it's not a public application, it's a professional application, not only for employees. And they can use in our meeting with our clients to present, to show some contents and specific contents. So we have to create some different contents, first to be able to very useful for employees and to be very exciting for our clients. So it's not a minor objective to combine these two goals, but you don't have sometimes to only to put in your mind final clients, but you have to put in your mind your sales departments too. So to be aligned with your sales department is very, very important, and sponsorship is so important. And at the end, of course, when you start to deploy, it's very important for everybody to define some KPI, some very clear and very efficient KPI. From our part, we decided to define 3 major KPIs. The first is about to be able to define if the number of employees who install the application. So after 2 years, we have 70% of our employees using the application, maybe one time. I think it will be better if they use it each time, but maybe one time. This application is on the top 5 of the application for employees. So I think it's a very, very good adoption. The third point is about the time session, because it's not only if you have the application on your iPhone and you use sometimes, but it's very important to know if you spend time to use it on your customer relationship. So we have more, each session is about more than 5 minutes. It's not very long, but the time session is increased each month. So I think the number of users increases, the time session is increased. So I think the adoption is very, very good. So I think the transformation is okay, but we have to improve some KPIs and to improve some features in the future to increase this KPI.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. Very interesting KPIs, because at the end of the day, that's what is worth for the management as well at PwC, I'm sure. And as you just said, it's not only one launch. You need to launch regularly new versions of the app, of the features and updates of the content, so that you make it continuously successful. So thank you again. Very valuable feedback again. So again, that's a basic statement I'm displaying on the screen now, but it's important to define clearly and precisely what you want, rather than trying to include everything you want in the first launch of your new digital content and service. We say that because sometimes we see customers who want to bring in many features, many audiences and diversity of audiences. It's really good to focus on what you want to deliver first. So we have a new question now for you guys, so that you don't fall asleep. And Morad will give you that question now.
We are not falling asleep, Stéphane. Fantastic. This one looks at how the following describes your audience's expectations. So we've been talking a lot about what the needs are of the organization to get content delivery under control and moving smoothly. But also, what is it your audience is expecting of you? So you can select one or more of the following. So are they wanting you to be mobile-centric? Are they wanting you to focus more on the user experience? Do they want to access content regardless of device or place? Perhaps it's all about personalization and bespoke access to content. Or perhaps it's a general sense of trust and security and confidentiality. Now, we've touched on a number of these issues. And You've mentioned security, Jean-Paul, as well, but also Stéphane, you also mentioned about rather than trying to answer every need with the first launch, there can be a tendency when you discover that the consumer, the end user of your content wants something to happen, that sort of spurs an instant reaction to speed it along, to get it underway. Which of these have you been focusing on? Which has been the most important for PwC? And did you have to triage it to say, no, they're all important, but we really must focus on one to make sure we do it correctly, and then we can iterate?
Yeah, you. Sure, all is important.
It's all great, 90% on everything.
Yeah, but maybe I give you a different feedback about this question, because I will answer from my part, from marketing direction, what is most important for marketing direction. Not only for customer, but for marketing direction, because it's very important for us to understand why we spend money and time to implement some new tools and new experience to user. Sharing capabilities is one of the most important, because it's very important for us to be able to understand what's the need of our customers. And if you have this kind of tools, you are able to understand what your customer want to receive, what they want to read, how long time they spend to read content, on which content they click, and not only when they are in a website, because it's not the same experience, it's a different experience, but when they are with our employees, when they discuss with our partner, when they discuss with our sales department, we have a better understanding of the needs of the client, and we can improve the quality of our content. We can improve the delivery, of course, and the most relevant content. So understand our client is the most important exception. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, here there's a decent spread as well. Interestingly, with all the discussions about things like GDPR and talking about data breaches, security and confidentiality clearly is coming, not insignificant at about a fifth of respondents, but it's coming at the bottom compared to the ability to access content wherever. Clearly, convenience and accessibility trumps all. So some interesting insights there, and we're going to move back across to Stéphane, I think, to continue the presentation and find out what the answers are here for Rakuten Aquafadas.
Yeah, thank you, Morag. Thank you, Jean-Paul, again. And just to come back to the last point of Jean-Paul, it's very important before we dig into the consumer expectations to understand how consumers are consuming the content and using the applications, websites. So that's why analytics are the key to all these points, to understand clearly where they clicked on, which content they downloaded, which content they didn't go through entirely, or where did they stop. So definitely statistics and analytics are the key for that kind of question. So now regarding as Rakuten Aquafadas to let's say more generically speaking, all the consumer expectations regarding these new kinds of digital content, services and apps, for sure we know and you know that we live in a mobile-first, mobile-centric world. That's even more than before. We all know the percentage of website navigation on mobile over website navigation on desktop. So that's more than 70% of mobile usage for the web today in the world. But it's also and mainly now about user experience. We all know that we have to remove as much friction as we can from all the steps a consumer has to access a service or content or whatever he wants to use on his mobile, which is the first, again, device used by any consumer today. So frictionless is everywhere for every, not only marketing director, but for all the management staffs and all the companies to deliver that. As you said, Morag, and that was the biggest percentage of the poll results, we need the content we need to access the content everywhere, every time, on demand, when we need it, and for our own purpose. So definitely using whatever device, whatever screen, but also new user interfaces coming up, what we call conversational user interfaces, like audio interfaces, virtual private assistants. You get even now VPAs, or virtual private assistants in VR, virtual reality. We at Rakuten Aquafadas are introducing these new kinds of user interfaces in our roadmap later this year. Chatbots are also, very present everywhere now to help a user to navigate through a search or FAQ or whatever to get access easily to the content. Synchronization also comes at the top, because when you get access to multiple devices, you want your content to be synchronized, so that when you left your content at a specific slide or page, you want to start again from the same page on another device. It has to be relevant to you as well. You don't want to watch and read and consume all the content available, but only the one which is relevant to you. It has to be personalized also for you, for the way you consume the content, so for your interface and the way to consume the content. And content is so key, and because we want it accessible, synchronized, relevant, and personalized, it has to be reusable. So we need to split and fragment the content so that it can be reused across multiple channels. Remember that the goal of this webinar is how to streamline the content over multiple channels. And this is where content reuse is at the top of the requirements, and repurpose your content over different publishing channels. Sharing capabilities, you just said it, Jean-Paul, that was one of your top expectation and requirement. Definitely, it's not only about consuming the right content in the right location at the right time, but also the capability to share it with your colleagues, with your customers, your consumers, at the time you read it or consume it. I think between all of us at this table, you need also to make sure that the content is certified, that this is a good content reaching the good person at the right time, on the right location, at the right location. And this is why expert curation comes in the loop as well. We work a lot at Rakuten Aquafadas with big press publisher groups. The issue today with fake news, so we are introducing also new and innovative technologies for that aspect, based on blockchain technology, for instance. But expert curation is definitely also very important. And last but not the least, but Jean-Paul said it much better than me, it's about security, confidentiality of your content when it comes to all these sorts of devices. And maybe, Jean-Paul, you wanted to add some point on these aspects.
Yes, of course. I start by the end. Security and confidentiality is very important in our business. It's one of our major points, because we create some specific content for specific clients. So it's very important to create a secure environment, and to be sure that only these people receive this content, and create this experience for this guy, not for the other. So it's very, very important. Of course, expert curation is important. We create a lot of content. You can visit our website. You can see a large type of content, and it's very important to be able to be sure that it's PwC content, not other content. I explained before, sharing capabilities is very important. And our next challenge is to be able to create, to improve the reuse of the content, and to create some new kinds of content, because you create deep studies in different topics. But as I explained at the beginning, it's very important to be able to install this content in the customer journey of our clients. So sometimes we are on awareness, sometimes we are on transformation of your client. So you want to receive some different type of content. So it's very important for us to be able to reuse some content. And we work with Aquafadas to create some new interface, some new features to be able to increase these capabilities and to reduce the time to create this content, because it's very consumer time and consuming time, and of course the cost is very important point in our business strategy. So this is our future goal in the near future.
Yeah, thank you, Jean-Paul. That's goals for both of us now.
With pleasure.
Yeah. So yeah, after this, I think Jean-Paul said it also very well and very clearly at the very beginning of this webinar. When you get to multi-channel content delivery, it's very important to embrace all the people who are, let's say, responsible of the content at some steps. And this is why it's very important as well to define, first of all, your workflows, the processes you have internally. Before you get any new tool or any new technologies or whatever, it's very important to identify exactly the different steps your content gets into, and also make everyone aware of his role. Because when you look at such a sequential or linear workflow like this one, which is a very standard one, getting from initial brief to the final approved content, you have multiple persons involved, and any point can be a break point. So anyone can get out or doesn't do the right step at the right time, and then your workflow gets stuck in. So that's why define it and also assign the proper ownership and responsibilities to each member of the team is very important. This is just about the content creation itself, but when it gets a bit more complicated as well is when you want to deliver that content, because you created the content, it was approved, which is already a very first step. And the second step is now to deliver it to your audience, the famous targeted audience that we introduced before. So you have an assembly of images, videos, text, documents that you want to push to your websites, to your mobile apps, and many new channels coming up now, because you know that this is the rise of IoT and also wearables. So you will get your content to multiple channels, even those you didn't expect as of today. And you see that let's say black box in the middle, which is how do I get into that? How do I transform all these contents? And as much as possible in an automated way as well, because as Jean-Paul was saying, you need to reduce the time to market of your products and the associated contents and services. And this is why you definitely need to get ROI on that aspect and automate as much as you can, which is also part of our tool set capabilities, for instance. So maybe
I can add a point about this workflow. It's one of the collateral effects of the changes with this kind of transformation, is to be able for our graphic team to be more near to our clients, because they are able to have a better understanding of the usage of their content, because they can publish directly on the website, they can publish directly on the web app, and they can see, it's very easy for us to have access to some statistics. And they can improve the quality of their production only because they have direct access to the information. They have direct access to website. They don't have need to send it to the web content team, and they don't understand what's happened in the content web team, but they have direct access to mobile app. So they transform the knowledge, and they transform their skills to improve their capabilities to help the marketing team and not only to execute.
Yeah, that's a very good one. Thank you, Jean-Paul, for adding it, because, for instance, our technologies can be added to your current skill sets, and graphic studios, graphic designers can use our products to build and create this new enriched and digital content, and then push it and publish it to these devices and channels. So that's where you get control back in your department, thanks to such new technologies. I think we have a last question for our audience, so I will let Morag ask it now.
That's right. I'm back again with my pesky questions. So this is our final poll, and it is a nice, simple one to round off. Having looked at all the content delivery processes, we'd love to know if you feel you are getting some ideas there about how you might begin to ease or simplify the content delivery process. I mean, chaps, I think one of the things that's come across to me in this presentation so far is that content initially seems like a, go out, create content, but then it suddenly becomes very clear very quickly that it is a very complex process with a great number of moving parts, a great number of things required to prioritize, to budget for, to implement, and new things to bring in. But I think we've seen very much through this presentation about how you can streamline that, how you can remove some of that complexity and turn it into a sort of sensible workflow. One thing that interests me, Jean-Paul, is now that you've gone through some of this process and the organization has seen what is possible in terms of content delivery, how do you then, keep them engaged? It brings their ideas out and the possibilities that your team can then do in terms of content. How do you keep them engaged, but also keep them on track? Because, you suddenly released into this sweetie shop of, we can do this now, but we can't do, as you said earlier, you both said earlier, you can't do everything all at once. So keeping them engaged but on track, has that been a challenge for you?
Yes, of course, it's a big challenge because as I explained, it's not only a technical question. It's a question of adoption for all the team, for marketing team first. So because they have to understand the capabilities and which features they can use and how they can imagine a new content, a new strategy. For graphic team, they have to be more producers, they need to be more creative, and they have to be able to use some new technologies, and they have to define a new job. Also, that's sometimes very easy. For our partners, it's a new, they have to change sometimes their mindset, how they can show some content and they can create a new interaction, a new user experience, and of course for our clients. So we discussed with Aquafadas, Rakuten Aquafadas, to develop a new application for B2C, not only for internal usage, but for B2C too, because we detect some new needs and we have to adapt our strategy to these changes. Every time it changes, so it's very exciting.
Well, here we see the audience has spoken. Happily, more than half are coming up with some ideas on how to ease the content delivery process. Still 44% feeling as if they're slightly in the dark. Well, again, we still have some presentation to go, and also you can review this presentation after 24 hours when it will be available on demand. So you can go through some of the great advice that Stéphane and use cases that Jean-Paul have come up with. But for the time being, I'm going to let you guys get on and continue with the rest of the presentation, and we'll sum up in a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you, Morag. Thank you, Jean-Paul, again. And yeah, this poll result is interesting. I was expecting, to be honest, that kind of result. I would say half-half, because, but it's good to see that most of you already have an idea as well on how to streamline that content delivery. We are here as well to give you not only a very good and valuable customer feedback from Jean-Paul, but also how we can help you along that journey. One of the very first step of a solution, part of a solution, is definitely, you remember these two workflows about the content creation and content delivery, which are almost separate in many cases because different tool sets, different skill sets, different people assigned to different roles, but you have to see how they can fit together. And this is a purpose also of Rakuten Aquafadas solution, which can fit inside your information system or outside of it, but fitting with your workflows and making sure that you can smoothly publish the content you created up front. Next, for such, I would say, streamlining of your content, you would need, like we do, a platform agnostic approach, because you don't want to target only one kind of devices or just the web or mobile apps. but all of them together. This is why, for instance, at Rakuten Aquafadas, we provide all of these channels, Android, iOS platform, as well as any new web platform, I would say, generally speaking, for these publishing channels. And also channels where you can repurpose and deploy your content, but the way you want. You have to get it also accessible through very easy to use front-end solutions. In our case, we provide a solution which can help you to update real-time the storefront of your app, like PwC is doing that very well with their mobile apps. And you can update not only the content, but also the navigation, the banners, so that you can change the look and feel all the time you want, and yourself. You don't need to go across developers or IT departments or even Rakuten Aquafadas to do that. You are in control, you are in charge, because you want to reduce the time to market again of your content. And also, at the end of the day, it's to help your content creators to work on what they are aimed at, which means creating more content and better content. So, because at the end of the day, the role of content is to create revenue or add revenue, because it will help to reduce the cost, or it will add a value proposal to your product. So you have to produce it in a better way, in a faster way, cheaper and easier for your audience to consume as well. And then you will have achieved that complete streamlining of your content workflows. This is why we are glad to say that at Rakuten Aquafadas, we have a solution for that, because we already provide such a platform to help you to publish multi-channel content to all these channels. And the biggest brands, Jean-Paul is here to prove it with us today. The biggest brands are using our solution for such workflows. Again, we are still back, you know, to the formal and generic workflows, creating the content, managing it and publishing it, and finally delivering the content to the channels. It has always been that kind of workflows, and we are part of it for sure. But what we provide to you is, first of all, a way to create all sorts of content. First of all, your legacy content, your PDF content, but also push your videos and audios, automate it. As you can see on the left side, we have automation and industrial workflows to help you automate that publishing aspect. And all sorts of formats. You can build it with our awarded plugin to Adobe InDesign. You can just push your PDF as is and enrich them with our front end. You can create also responsive content for not only the website, your website, but also the mobile usage, and again, automate it. It's not only about the content. We also provide you with a tool set to build your own apps without being a developer. You don't need to be technical. You don't need to code. We will provide you with templates, and then you can use them. You can customize the content of your storefront, which you see in the middle of this app, and by a simple drag and drop of widgets, as we call them, or banners, which can be, again, videos, contents, slideshows or carousels or web views, as you can see on the animated video. Yeah?
Yeah. In our business, we have changed our graphic chart at the beginning of January, and it will be a very good opportunity to test the capabilities of Rakuten Aquafadas to adapt very easily. Yes, yes. The apps. We have only need of few hours to adapt all the application, and sometimes when you try to do it, it's a very, very hard challenge. But we will succeed in only few hours, so it's a very good experience.
That's a good point, very good point. And brand identity is definitely a top and one regular change is now at many companies, including us at Rakuten. So again, to summarize, we provide a complete digital content publishing suite where you get content creation tools, you get content ingestion tools. I won't get into all the details. We can do that during another session, and we have a lot of webinars and YouTube videos on our channel if you want to dig into them. We have products as well to manage your content and how to publish it to the right audience, to the right app with confidentiality or whatever push notifications you need. all of that in different formats for all the main top platforms on the market, like iOS, Android, but also Windows, Mac OS X applications and web platforms. So again, a lot of tools to help you to create that new content. In order to package it in an easier way for you, we also provide solutions, predefined solutions for sales enablement, for onboarding, for internal communication and external communications, as well as pure digital publishing industrial workflow if you just want to generate rich, engaging content in a manual or automated way. And this is my very last slide before we get into your Q&A session. We want also to be your cutting-edge technology companion along the way, because you know how this space is moving fast, and this is why at Rakuten and Rakuten Aquafadas we always bring new innovations. So we are preparing, for instance, progressive web apps, which will be probably the future of mobile apps on your mobile devices. We want to bring also new user experience with conversational UIs like chatbots, but also audio and natural language processing tools. We are already bringing in some new artificial intelligence features and services to automate the content production and personalization of it. And we will start, by the way, certainly a very good early testing with Jean-Paul as well on this one. Extended analytics also are very important because you get new user experience, new UIs, so you need also new analytics to track the new behaviors of your users when it comes to audio or augmented reality, for instance, that we are also integrating at the moment. So, and 5G, because Rakuten is becoming the next 5G operator in Japan. So we know a lot about 5G, which is coming up to Europe as well within the next 2 years, will bring real-time services, features and contents, very high bandwidth to download very rich content. So we are preparing that new field for you. So that you stay ahead of the age with mobile first and mobile centric applications. So I think I'm done. We are done, Jean-Paul and myself, and I give the control back to you, Morag, now.
That's what you think, Stéphane. You are very much not done, because I have some questions for you. Sure. Fantastic. That really was a great presentation. I love to see practical advice, not just, you know, this is where you must be as a brand, this is what you must do as a company, and these are challenges for you. But here we're going to show you what the workflows look like. This is what streamlined delivery looks like, and this is the moving parts within it, and I think it's fantastic. Again, we didn't go into the nuts and bolts of how those various things work. As Stéphane said, there's a load of webinars existing. There's also some YouTube presentations, I understand that you said. So people should definitely go off and have a look at precisely how that all integrates. But we do have a couple of questions just to round off the presentation with, and one of them I think is very interesting perspective. We talk a lot about automation and technologies, and again, Rakuten Aquafadas is a piece of technology to put in and manage your content delivery. But the question is there an ideal human team structure for driving this kind of project forward and then delivering content?
I don't know. Maybe you want to start.
No,
okay. So, yeah, that's I think the key question. Definitely.
Excellent.
Yeah, because technology is only technology, and it's only valuable when it serves some objectives and it gets good results out of it. But at the end of the day, humans are the key resources because they use that technology. So there is no ideal team. I would say that if you come up with such very well-defined objectives and also roles in your team, and you assemble a good project team based on different people, resource set, skill set, also domain expertise, business domain expertise. And if you give them the proper vision and objectives, and then you empower them with the right tools and you train them and you get them associated with this new objective as well, which means you don't only want to push a final solution, but you want to get their feedback and you want to create maybe the new kind of solution thanks to their feedback. If you engage with your team, then you will get, I would say, the ideal team.
Yes, sure. And for the point of view of PwC, the main challenge of transformation is about the marketing. First, because you have to change your mindset, as I explained, and how you can create some new content. It's not so easy. It's not so easy because you have, when we discuss with some expert, internal expert about the topics, crypto money, or sometimes it's easy, but when you talk about regulation, some old business or core business, sometimes it's very hard to explain why you have need to change your content, the experience. It's not so easy to explain and to create some new experience. So the first step is to convince partners and marketing team. And the second step is to transform the capabilities, the behaviors of our sales department, because you have some reflex, you use PowerPoint, you use some common tools, and sometimes it's very easy to, okay, it's better to use my old PowerPoint. It's better or more easier to use than Aquafadas or than bookstore. But it's a very important changes. Internal skills about graphic studio, it's not a minor point, but it's not the major point of changes. And it's same for IT team. They are very good adoption from new tools. They are they are very
PwC, yeah. Thank you, Jean-Paul.
You make an interesting point that the team can very much be individual to the organization, but the very key, as I was listening there, you were saying you need to get together, and this is the general you need to get together these people. Who should that person, who should be the overlord, the person driving this? Is it the CMO? Is it from IT? Is there an ideal person placed to begin that process and start looking around the organization for building that team?
I like to say CMO first.
Why?
I don't know why. No, I think CMO is one of the major person to engage this project, because they have to discuss with sales department. We are very aligned. We work in the same organization with, in PwC, we have a large department, is a sales and marketing team. It's a large department, so it's very easy to discuss with sales department. But marketing can engage this kind of transformation, yes, because they have some opportunity to discuss with sales department and with IT too. So it's a very good opportunities.
Yeah, and to complete that answer, at Rakuten Aquafadas, we target mainly CMOs, but also internal communications and external communications directors, sales directors, sometimes also HR departments, because they are in charge of all the training and onboarding contents. So yeah, we are more, let's say, chatting with business domain experts at companies like this. But for sure, as also Jean-Paul said, as soon as the first meeting is done and we progress and move on, IT will be involved. This is for sure mandatory in that. But this is not the first step, I would say.
Fantastic. Well, this leads me, I think, to a good question to end on, as time is pressing on and we near the end of the hour. This really is the $64 million question, which is, as marketers and from the marketing perspective, in terms of streamlining content, if we go back to the very beginning of starting this process, can you give any examples or proof points as to how the process of streamlining content ultimately, and you did touch on this earlier, ultimately is going to improve creativity, it's going to improve brand consistency, and bottom line, improve revenue?
Yes, sure. It's improve creativity first, because we are able to listen differently our customer. We create a new user experience, and we have to invent a new user experience. It's so important. And in the final goal, we increase revenue. We have we join Rakuten Aquafadas solution with our marketing automation tools. And now we are able to see the transformation of our customers. So it will increase revenue, yes, in the future, I'm sure.
Fantastic. Well, that has been a fantastic presentation. I'd love to thank both Stéphane and Jean-Paul for those fantastic insights and some great food for thought for our listeners to go on with. This webinar was brought to you by Visible Marketing in association with Rakuten Aquafadas. And once again, the on-demand recording will be sent to you within the next 24 hours. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.